I'm keeping an eye.
Okay, Stephanie.
Hi, everyone. We are just watching people come into the Zoom room, and we'll get started in just a few seconds. It's nice to see the numbers climbing up.
We have quite a few that are joining today too, so we might wait a little bit longer than we normally do.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's 2:01 now, and we are going to get started. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here today. It's so nice to be here with you today. We are truly humbled by the incredible response to this webinar. It's actually a bit overwhelming. This will be the most well-attended webinar with the highest number of participants in OARC webinar history. We thank you for being here with us today. Right now, there are residents, team members, family and chosen family members, long-term care consultants, managers, educators, spiritual care providers, doctors, and decision makers tuning in to hear what residents have to say about supporting, honoring, and remembering their peers. For the next hour, all across the province, OARC has the privilege of highlighting and sharing what residents have told us about what it means to be part of the palliative and end-of-life program in their homes. What the interest in this webinar confirms for us is that we need to have more conversations about death and dying in long-term care, that residents want to be part of those conversations, and that team members want to know how to involve residents. It also confirmed for us that there is a great amount of love in the long-term care sector. For some, this might be a sensitive topic. It might stir up uncomfortable feelings, but you still joined us today. And we believe the reason for that is love. Thinking about and being of service to others, even when you might be facing your own challenges, is a sign of love. We thank you for being here today. My name is Stephanie, and I'm the Director of Education with the Ontario Association of Residents Councils. Today, here with me today is Melissa Matheson, who's our Education and Home Support Manager. Hi, Mel.
Hi, Steph.
Devora, who is our real co-chair and the leader of her residence council in her home in Toronto. Hi, Devora.
Hi, Stephanie.
And Carol, who is also a real member and a leader in her home in London. Thank you,
Stephanie.
Hi, Carol. Okay. Thank you. So we'll keep going along. Next, we have our land acknowledgement. Together, let us now pause as we acknowledge the Indigenous people of all the lands that we are on today. From wherever we are virtually participating in today's meeting, let us take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the land we each call home. We do this to affirm our commitment and responsibility to improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. We acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people who call this nation home. Let us now join in a moment of reflection to acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past and to consider how each of us in our own way can move forward in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. Thank you. So we had lots of questions come in through the registration process, and throughout the webinar, we will answer many of them. Because the purpose of this webinar is to highlight resident involvement and experiences, we won't be answering questions related to the biological changes that occur at the end of life, pain and symptom management, or nursing and medical assessments and interventions. There will be a resource document made available with the recording of this webinar, and you're also welcome to connect with us via telephone or email for individualized assistance. As always, the chat feature has been disabled for this session, but you are most welcome, and we encourage you to type in your questions into the Q&A box. Again, there will be a recording of this webinar that will be made available after. And at the end, there is an evaluation that we really look forward to getting your feedback through. So why did we choose this topic? Why is this the topic of October's Webinar Wednesday? At OARC, residents are the driving force behind all we do. OARC is the only association mandated to identify and highlight issues of importance to residents and bring those forward. We hear from residents often through our weekly resident forums, when we visit long-term care homes in person, when residents call us with questions or for assistance to understand their rights, or when they want to get some help understanding the legislation. Something that we've noticed is that when residents reach out to us with questions, it's usually after they've tried to get the answer to their question from some other place, some other source. Maybe they've noticed something in their home, or even, they're curious about something in their home. Maybe they've asked other residents or team members, and they just don't get the answer that they're looking for. They know that more can be done. So when they reach out to us, what we've come to understand is that what's really happening is residents are looking to improve something that's happening or not happening in their home, and they want us to confirm whether or not it's possible. This is how the topic of residents supporting residents at end of life and being involved in honoring them after death came about. Through our weekly resident forums, they take place every Thursday at 2 p.m. Someone asked the question, what happens when a resident dies in a long-term care home? After hearing what other residents shared and what was possible, that same resident who asked the question stated, "We do nothing here. We aren't even allowed to know when someone has passed away. Most of the time we figure it out when we see someone new moving in." This was surprising and even shocking for some residents on the forum to hear. But what was most unexpected was that this resident wasn't the only one. It wasn't just a one-off. Other residents on the call also began to share that their homes did nothing. So if we think about this for a moment, let's just sit and think about it for a moment. Is it actually possible that there are homes that are doing nothing? Ontario's Long-Term Care Act, so the law that governs long-term care homes in the province, states that homes are required to provide palliative and end-of-life care. And the Resident Bill of Rights also states that residents have the right to be provided with care and services based on a palliative care philosophy. So it has to be happening. The question is, why doesn't every resident know about it? If it's happening in their home, why don't residents know about it? And our next slide will talk about some of the reasons, some of the barriers.
So some of the residents have shared with us on the forums when we talk with them at, my in-home visits and things like that. They've shared with us the bumps or barriers. Their home is identified as reasons why they can't be involved in the end of life activities, or why they can't know about why somebody's, passed away, or not why, but that somebody has passed away. And some of those bumps are talking about death and dying might be upsetting to residents. And we do understand that this is a topic that can be upsetting. Devora and Carol, we've had this discussion before, and you guys are quite adamant that, and many other residents as well, when you come into long-term care, you don't move in there to die, but to get the help you need so you can live fully. And sometimes these conversations might come about when someone does pass away, or what your wishes could be. That would be hard. Now, another one would be team members may be hesitant or lack necessary supports. And sometimes, you know, they don't have what the way to talk to them. They might not know what to say, or they might be feeling a little bit, don't want to do the wrong thing. And this could mean that they don't say anything at all. So what I really encourage you to do as a home or even as a resident council, talk to your team members and talk to your management staff to have those conversations with the staff members to say, this is what you can have, this is what you can talk about, and this is the process, so that all team members know about what the process is and what they can and cannot say to residents. And then the third one is resident wishes may not be known. So those are some conversations that you'd want to have with residents, or roles may not be well defined. This could mean that the residents are not sure what they can do and how they can support the other residents and families. Staff might not be sure who is to do what when someone passes in regards to the home process, like I said earlier, so nobody does it. But if you do have a process in place, think about having a resident on each of your home areas who may be the designate to know the process, and team members on each shift to know the process and can lead the home through it in the evening, during the day, or different shifts, that everybody kind of is communicating and knowing what that process would be. And privacy concerns. This is probably the most used reason why some reasons are not told in the home when someone is dying or has died. And honestly, I believe it's one of the most misunderstood. In the Personal Health Information Protection Act 2004, it states that a long-term care home can disclose health information relating to a resident in general terms. So the home is able to share with residents another resident's general health status described in general terms, which in the Act it says general terms described as critical, poor, stable, or well, or in similar terms. So for example, if a resident is not doing well and that they are at the end of life, the home is able to share that with other residents. They can let you know that your friend is not doing well so that you can go visit them and comfort them. We chose the name Bumps in the Road because a bumpy road doesn't equal a closed road. Bumpy roads, they force us to be alert. They force us to be a bit more cautious, to be creative and going around. But they don't mean it has to be the end of the journey. And in this case, we really encourage and feel it is very important to look for creative ways in navigating this in each of your homes, because it really is worth the extra attention. Next slide.
Thanks, Mel. And something you mentioned just made me think of something else. Being creative and being aware of, yes, you are working, living in a home that also provides healthcare services, that's also part of the healthcare continuum. So yes, there are certain rules that apply in those settings, but the long-term care home is more than a continuum of the healthcare, is more than a healthcare continuum. It's more than a spot on the continuum. It's a home and it's a community. Yeah. So if you think about it, if you frame it as this is a home, this is a community, what's acceptable in a home and in a community? If Carol asks me or says, you know, I haven't seen Devora in the dining room for a few days, is she okay? And my response is, well, I can't tell you anything because of privacy.
No.
It's not a good feeling, and it makes things more difficult than they need to be. And like Mel said, there are reasons why that's the answer that's given. Sometimes it's just the easiest thing to say when you have a lot of other things going on. Sometimes you just don't have the time to sit and have a difficult conversation, or maybe you don't feel comfortable to have those difficult conversations. But if there's ever something that comes up, a reason that's given, maybe someone told you that no, we can't say anything because of privacy, I encourage you to Be creative, be curious, think about that. Where is that actually coming from? Is that in the actual legislation? The legislation is available for all to look at. Is that in an actual policy that you can't say to a resident, you know, Joanne's in the hospital, or, you know, she's not feeling well? Challenge it, put it on trial and see where that's actually coming from and if it's true. Thank you. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the legislation and the Resident Bill of Rights, which again is part of the legislation. And they speak to the requirements around palliative and end-of-life care. Looking at and interpreting the legislation could be its very own webinar. So we're not going to spend much time doing that today. What we are going to do, we've already mentioned, today we're looking at things from the resident's perspective. So for team members who are joining us today, even if you've already seen and heard about the ideas and the topics we're presenting today, our hope is that after this webinar, you're able to sharpen the lens that you look at things through and hear the voices of residents in everything that you do. So the Resident Bill of Rights, your 29 rights if you live in a long-term care home. They seem pretty straightforward, though. We all have the little booklet. Many of us have the booklet. We see the poster on the wall. But let's take a look closer at this one. What does a right about friendship and relationships have to do with residents supporting residents at the end of life and honoring them after death? There's 2 other rights out of the 29 that specifically talk about palliative and end of life. So why did we choose this one? What does this have to do with it? My answer is everything. As an adult, I've experienced that it's really hard to make friendships, make friends as you get older. It becomes more difficult to connect with people and maintain those connections. Think if you've ever had to move schools, or maybe you started a new job somewhere. It's not always easy to have to start over, to put yourself out there and make new connections. How about moving into a long-term care home? Residents have shared with us that it's difficult to connect with their neighbors, but they've also shared that it is possible. We've seen it happen in the resident forums. People connect, people form friendships. It is possible. And how nice is it when you finally do get to make that connection? So, you know, you've started at a new workplace, you meet a new friend, you make a connection. When you've had the opportunity, it's wonderful. It's great to make a new friend, to have someone that sees you and that you see. Every resident has the right to form friendships and relationships and to participate in the life of the long-term care home. Period. There's no exceptions to this right. It doesn't say only in good health or only during the good times. Residents have the right to experience the fullness of what it means to be a friend and relate to someone and to participate in all aspects of life in the home, even end of life. For some, this could mean offering support and comfort to a friend who's unwell or dying. It could mean being informed and given the opportunity to say goodbye, or even participating in honoring or remembering a friend who has passed away.
So each of the long-term care homes, like Steph talked about earlier, you had mentioned that there's home programs. And one of the home programs you mentioned, Steph, was the Palliative Care Committee. And it's an interdisciplinary committee that includes residents. And if yours doesn't include residents in the home, we strongly encourage you to have residents involved in it, to be able to share their point of view in how they want to be honored and honor one another. And some of the responsibilities include identifying when residents become palliative. Staff are usually made aware, and this is a great time to discuss during the committee how you're going to let the residents and families know as well. It's a place where they'll develop and establish communication methods. So communication symbols I've seen in some of the homes I've gone to are a butterfly or a dove or a rose. Some homes will light a candle or a Himalayan salt lamp on the home area when someone passes away to let people know. But it's really, really important to inform residents on the communication methods you have established. So if you do have during these committees put together and developed a way to communicate that somebody is palliative, let the residents know, and so that they can go and share with them as well. Carol, what does your home do to let your residents know that someone might be palliative in the home?
Well, one thing, we hang a butterfly on the door frame, letting people know that, they're in their last part of life.
Mm-hmm.
We also have an honor guard, which is when we escort the person out the door.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have celebration of a life with the pastor, which is giving a rose, but it also includes the family, so that the family can come in and express the things they want to talk about their relative.
So when someone is palliative in the home, on the door frames, they put the butterfly.
Yes, they do.
They do. And some of the other things you mentioned, we are going to go in a little bit more in depth, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about how that came about. But I wanted to know, Devora, as well, from your home, how do they let you know that someone might be palliative? Do they have a symbol on the door as well?
No.
No?
As a matter of fact, I never know when someone has passed away.
Mm.
The only way I get the information is through a team member. And they'll say, "Did you hear so-and-so died?" Oh, you're kidding. I didn't know they were even sick.
And
we
how does
have
that...
we have no communication between the management and the residents for any
and that must
for
be...
anything going on in the home. Actually, I'm lying. I got an email from the administrator today, which shocked me, telling me what was going on in the home, but not mentioning people who are palliative, because I get the story that, oh, it's private, we can't tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was in the hospital for 2.5 weeks, and I'm sure people knew that I wasn't here. I don't know if they asked, but no one told me that they asked about me.
Yeah, and
And-
see, that
and
doesn't
then
feel
I
very
came-
nice. That's not a nice feeling. And so those are some things that as a council you can bring to your management team to say, hey,
Yeah.
this is how we feel, and this is what we would like to see. So that would be a great opportunity for you to be able to do that.
That's what I'm going to do. We haven't had a residence council meeting because we've been in outbreak. We're still technically an outbreak.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I'm hoping we will be out of the outbreak before our next meeting. And there are a lot of things I would like to approach, put on my agenda to discuss. But I really feel before the pandemic, we had talked about having something to honor the people who passed away. I had been part of a palliative pilot project that we did a few years ago with McGill and McMaster's, but I was on the champion team to go and see palliative people, but nothing became of it. Pandemic arrived and everything flew out the window.
Yeah.
We had discussed before the pandemic having an honor guard and walking the people who passed away. We have quilts. We have 2 quilts, one Christian and one Jewish, somebody made. And we always walk the resident out the front door, because the policy is the residents walk in the front door, so they should walk out the front door.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
right now, as far as I know, nothing is going on.
Well, I have heard from homes the pandemic did stop a lot of things, and a lot of homes are starting back up with the committees and they're doing things. And so you'll see another note on the slide, sorry. And it's partnering with community members to connect residents to services as well. So these programs are really important in the home. You'll see a picture on the slide on the right with the comfort. It's called a palliative or a comfort cart. And this is something else that your homes can put in. This is a cart from St. Patrick's Home in Ottawa, and the Homes Foundation supported the development of this cart. And these carts are put together, and I've seen them in several homes I've been in. I know a lot of homes do these, and these are a great support to the families when they are providing support and care to their loved one who is end of life.
We did have one of those. I don't know where it went.
Yeah. And I've seen them with, tea and drinks and music. They have an iPad on there so you can show your family pictures. I've seen one that actually has a projector of LED lights. So on the ceiling, you can have different lights and colors and sounds and soothing sounds. So it is something that's really nice to have.
Wow, that's very nice.
And another important thing with programs that the homes have that can support people in end of life is their spiritual care, where a minister or a priest or a rabbi, depending on the residents' wishes, comes in and supports and volunteers, spiritual volunteers. And really that's a very, very important program for people who do have a spiritual need. I want to really strongly encourage, especially after hearing Devorah's experience as well, because I have heard this in other homes, but to invite someone from your palliative care program to your resident council and share what your process is, what the home is working on, ask the residents for feedback. This is an important place at your council to be able to really share with the residents what your home is wanting to put in place or has in place. Also, another thought I had was to share about your palliative care committee if you do have residents involved in that. And I know Carol's home does some really interesting things with residents being involved with their palliative care. Some homes do welcome meetings. So when people are first in the homes in their first month, within a month, they'll have a tea, a welcome tea, and residents can share things with the new residents about, from their point of view, what they would like to tell or what they would have liked to have known moving in. That's also a great time to share the program that you have, your palliative care committee, ways that they can get involved and ways that they can be part of that program too.
Well, we have a welcome tea and also welcome baskets. So, yeah.
So that's really interesting, Devorah, that residents are involved in welcoming new people who move in, but not always involved in saying goodbye. And something that you mentioned earlier, Devorah, just, how you were talking about what happens, what's available in your home, maybe what's not happening in your home. When we were preparing for this webinar, we looked at a lot of resources that were developed for the long-term care sector. And most of them are for team members and mention providing support to the individual who's at end of life and their family or chosen family. Very, very few mentioned involving residents. So it sounds like your home has the foundations of a good program, but maybe what's missing is communicating the great things
Yes,
you're doing with residents. And that's something we hope that team members take away from this call today or from this webinar today, is that yes, there is a big focus on the family and chosen family, friends, and the resident themselves, of course. But
that's so important,
absolutely,
Stephanie. I have spoken to families that have been outside a person's deathbed because we don't have any specific rooms for palliative care. So the resident passes away in their own room, and the private rooms are really small. And of course, the shared rooms are even smaller, and you don't have any privacy, which is hard when you're trying to say goodbye to somebody. And it's hard for the other person living in the room.
Yeah.
Mhm.
thank you for sharing that. I just want to I'm looking at the questions just before we move on. There have been some questions coming in about the privacy part again, and lots of understanding of how that might feel as a resident to receive the answer, well, no, we can't tell you anything because of privacy.
Yeah.
This particular question says, well, what if the family does want privacy or the resident does want privacy and doesn't want their information shared? That's a very valid question and concern. My response would be, did you ask them though? Sometimes we assume that people don't want their information shared, but as Devora said, nobody asked her when she was in the hospital. No one said to her, hey, 5 residents have asked if you're okay. Is it okay if we tell them what's going on with you? What would you like us to share? And it's important to remember that the private health information it's not really what residents are asking, is it? They're not asking for measurements or for medications or for
Yeah.
diagnosis. They're not asking for that kind of thing. They're asking, is my friend okay? How are
Yeah.
they doing? And that's information that you can actually share without receiving consent, unless the family or resident has specifically said, we do not want any information shared.
Well, within the I guess up to 6 to 8 weeks, residents are given wish lists, and there are 10 items on the wish list, and they decide what they want at the end of life, and it's on the wish list. So if they don't want anybody to know, or they don't want the home involved, the residents involved, they need to put that down there.
That's a really good point and that brings up the having those conversations early on. So yesterday when we were brainstorming or running through this webinar for today, Devora shared, I don't know, Devora, if you want to share it, I don't want to take the words from you, how you would feel if someone spoke to you right when you moved in about these things.
Like for the first day.
I would be very upset, because as my theme is, I didn't move into long-term care to die. I moved into long-term care to live, to have a full and interesting life. And if you mention death to me the first day or two, that's going to upset me. That sounds like I'm there to die. Like my family put me in this place to die.
Yeah.
And I didn't like that feeling. So I would prefer not to have that conversation at the beginning when I first come in. That was my feeling.
Yeah, and that sort of lines up with what focus groups and some studies have shown, that sort of the best time to have the conversation is a couple of weeks after someone has moved in, or just around or before the time of the 6-week conference. So you've had some time to kind of get your bearings and you might have that conversation at that point. But yes, right from as close to the beginning as you can, getting those wishes and the do's and don'ts, knowing those things about residents is very, very important. And remembering that those things might change.
Yeah.
So I might move in and 2 weeks later, I might be very upset and I don't want to be friends with anyone. I don't want to know anything about anyone, and I don't want anyone knowing anything about me.
Yeah.
But maybe after a few months, after a year or so, maybe I would like people to know about me. Maybe I've made a friend. Maybe I have a connection to the home. I trust people now. And it brings me comfort in knowing that someone else notices I'm not there, or someone else wants to know that I'm okay. And we have to let people have those opportunities.
Stephanie
Well, they
said,
can change their wish lists. I mean,
Right.
any
that's right. Yep. And those can be done at your 1-year care conferences. You can
your
bring.
care
Yep.
conference. Yeah.
Yep. Stephanie said a very poignant statement yesterday. You know, residents are adults. They can choose to have the conversation with you or not. And I think
Right.
sometimes that needs to be remembered.
Yeah, and I think families also need to remember that it's what the resident wants, not what they want.
Mm-hmm. It's a good point.
Yeah. And something remembering something else that we talked about yesterday is that I'm just going back to the privacy thing again. The health information belongs to the resident, right? So as people who work in the long-term care home, we're taking care, we're the custodians of the private health information, but it doesn't belong to us. It belongs to the residents. So at any point, they have the right to share whatever they would like with whomever they would like. So whether that's, their health condition is changing, they're choosing to have assistance at the end of their life, or they're choosing the date that they're going to die, that information is theirs to share.
Mhm.
So, we as workers, as team members, are the custodians and the guardians and the caretakers of the information, but the information doesn't belong to us. It's theirs to share.
Yeah.
Okay, so we our slide deck, you'll notice for those on the line, you'll notice that we have a slide deck, and as normally happens when we're involved in conversation and chatting, we don't stick to the slides. So we're talking about everything in all kinds of different orders, which I think is okay. But again, the slides will be shared with you, and so it will help you jog your memory of what we're talking about, and the recording as well. But we're not really sticking to the slides, so we'll go through them so you have a chance to see them, but we're not really sticking to them, and that's okay.
Are we answering questions?
Yeah, so we've talked about quite a few of these things already. Carol, would you mind sharing with us what you told us yesterday about how you find out that someone, so you mentioned the butterfly, but you also said that you sat with someone, or you sit with people if they don't have a family member or someone who can be with them.
Yes. In particular, a lady, her son was coming in from California. And she was on the very verge of passing away. So I was asked by one of the ladies here, would you mind sitting with her and just talking to her and holding her hand and caressing her hand and letting her know that it's okay, darling, your John's going to be here pretty soon. And just trying to basically keep her alive until the son got there. Now, this happens with other residents also. And just to give them comfort until the family can arrive. Because a lot of times things happen when they're not around and the resident is alone.
Yeah, well, in my culture, I'm Jewish, and in my culture, a resident, when they die, are not supposed to be left alone. There has to be somebody in the room with them until they go to the funeral parlor. And even at the funeral parlor, they have to have someone sit with them all the time until the funeral. They are never left alone.
Thank you.
I
And
think that's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
something else you said yesterday, Carol, really just gave us some perspective. We were saying, you know, how great it was of you to be able to do that and to give that back to your neighbor who needed you. And you said that you actually got something back from being able to do that.
Oh, yes, I did. Oh, yes. I got the comfort in myself that I was basically giving to this resident, but I also knew that this was the comfort that I wanted myself, and that I was hoping that it would carry on in the future.
Yeah, that's something that has come out in other conversations with residents, is that not knowing what's happening at the home, or thinking that nothing happens at the home, brings up a fear or a sadness that perhaps that will be their experience when it's their time. So
Yes.
we may think that we're saving people from discomfort or from having, you know, tough conversations, but it brings up other things that we can't help, other feelings that we won't be able to help. So thank you both for sharing that, Carol. It's an important reminder that in giving back, you also receive.
Mm-hmm.
And in the home where maybe you're receiving a lot, it's an opportunity where you can give as well and have that feeling of giving back, as you said.
Most definitely, yes.
And sometimes, you know, homes are having a hard time getting staff to come in to be able to do a one-to-one. So just being able to have a friend sit there, another resident, really does help.
Mm-hmm.
We asked Carol, when Carol shared this with us yesterday, we asked her, you know, how did this come about? Is it because you were a nurse and you have experience in this kind of thing that the home asked you to do this? And Carol said no, she just started doing this on her own.
That's right.
And we asked, well, how do you know that somebody needs you? And Carol said she just walks around the home, and when she notices that she hasn't seen someone in a while, she'll
Mhm.
look for them. And, you know, not every home has someone with Carol's personality.
Mhm.
But there are people in homes who want to do that. They just need to be asked and allowed to do it.
Yeah.
So it's so important to offer these opportunities and ask people. The worst that could happen is they say no, that's not for me, you know, I'd rather not be involved. But giving them the opportunity to make that choice is so important.
Mm-hmm. And you
Yes,
know, the
ma'am.
families are so thankful, and they thank you for being with the palliative resident. And even when the family has to go outside because there's no room for more than two people in the room to be with the person, and they're standing outside chatting amongst themselves, and you go up and extend
That's
your
right.
sympathy, and they're so thankful. Thank you for being there for you know, my loved one. And
Mhm.
Yeah, to know that someone else in the home cares about your family member,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
We have family members who live in long-term care as well, and it's so moving to find out that, you know, this person, my family member, is part of this community.
Yeah.
We had this kind of sadness or feelings when they moved in that, you know, they were going to be taken away from community and family, but there's people here who care about them and who have gotten to know them and who want to say, who notice that they're not there, who want to say goodbye. It's really a beautiful thing. And it's so nice that you both feel comfortable enough to speak with family members and friends and let them know that their loved one was important.
Yeah, and getting to hear the stories from another resident of how their resident was involved in the home, and the funny memories that you have is really important too. Yeah, families really do enjoy that.
Well, this home, the home I live in, has the same celebration of life. After 3 months or so, they celebrate the lives of the people who passed away, and we have a rose, and it's put for each resident, it's put in a vase, and families are definitely invited, and team members are invited. And if a family isn't there, the team member usually gives a little blurb about the person who passed away. So it's a really, I guess, cathartic feeling for residents. Residents are invited to go, and also if they want to speak about their friend. So I find it cathartic to go to these things, and we have a really nice service with our pastor, and we have different hymns and songs we sing and prayers we say, and then at the end everybody sort of stands around and chats, and we have coffee and cookies.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that.
It really helps. I think it really helps with the family, because the family knows, you know, this is of course, this is a nursing home or whatever you call it.
No, it's a long-term care home.
It's also a community.
Yes.
Yes.
And we live in this community, and if at all possible, we try to support each other in what they're dealing with day by day.
That's why you need a strong residence council.
That's right.
That's right.
Thank you both. And you bring up something important, is that these tributes or these services, celebrations of life, give people the opportunity, they allow people to express their grief. Sometimes, you know, we've heard from team members too. Mel and I both worked in long-term care homes as well, and experienced many losses there. And sometimes you don't feel like you have the right to grieve or mourn when a resident has passed. So the service gives you that, allows you to do that. And so it's really important, and it allows residents to do the same. So on this slide here, we've talked about the honor guard, so the farewell procession, and we've talked about different types of communication. This photo that you see here is the Dignity quilt at Queen's Garden Long-Term Care Home in Hamilton. And this quilt was actually donated by a community group, the Caledonia Quilters, I believe it was. And this is another example of connecting with the community. So there are community groups who homes can connect with. That's part of the work of the palliative committee as well, to have these wonderful things brought into the home. Okay, so I just wanted to talk about something about communication here. So there is in the resource page that we're providing with this webinar, there is There are different resources there that talk about how to communicate when a death has occurred, how to share with residents, even some templates that give you some wording that might be helpful, and some different ways that you can communicate. So one example was at the next meal time, you know, a team member, or it could even be a resident, shares with the dining room that someone has passed away.
Mm.
Or we've heard at some homes, Carol, I think you were saying there's a candle or a card.
No, not a candle. We have the pictures of the people
Mhm.
that have passed in the frames up on a shelf in our dining room.
Hmm.
And it's there to let people know who has passed,
Mm.
and also so that people can communicate between each other. Well, I knew that person, you know,
Mhm.
and that way.
Yeah, and it's nice how you have it in each dining room. Some people who we spoke with said that maybe they have a chapel in one place in their home, and to find out if anyone has passed away, they have to go down to the chapel and look in one specific spot. So unless you can go down there and you even know that it exists, you might miss the opportunity to say goodbye. So having it where the residents are immediately, as soon as possible, and as easily accessible as possible is really important. It's not enough to just have it in one place in the home that may or may not be seen.
Mhm.
You need to really have it in the
Yeah.
place where it will be accessed. Okay, I think we can go to the next slide.
I did just want to mention too, Steph, before we do go on, even, and it is with both of these, but it's just the importance of having it in a timely manner so that they can say goodbye. And I think if we think about our own lives outside of living in the community, you know, you find out a friend, a coworker, or a neighbor has passed away, you know, you want to know so that you can say goodbye, you can be there.
Mhm.
And because if you don't get that chance and you find out weeks later, think about how that makes you feel. Well, that's the same as what the residents
Very
feel.
bad
Yeah.
Very bad.
It's a missed
and upset.
opportunity. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. This part, we've talked about memorial services a bit, and this slide also touches on that. Deborah mentioned that the memorial service or celebration of life at her home is led by a chaplain or a pastor.
Chaplain. I couldn't think of the word chaplain.
Oh, that's okay. And, you know, there are some homes do have chaplains or spiritual care leaders, other homes don't. And spiritual care providers are so skilled and have such a wealth of information and training and very important role in long-term care. But what we want to impress upon you today is that if your home does not have someone like this, it doesn't need to stop you from having a celebration of life. It can be led by someone who has a special talent or a love or a desire to do these types of services. It can be led by residents. You can reach out to your local community and see if there's someone who can come in to do the service for you. Or we were talking about some funeral homes even might be able to have one of their team members come in and help you create a template or a program for a memorial service that you could then use. So it's again, we're trying to eliminate as many bumps in the road or barriers as possible and start with yes and see what's possible. So we have heard from residents in some places who say, you know, well, we can't have a music program because we don't have a music therapist. So you can still enjoy music. You don't have to have a music therapist. Music therapy is so special and so important and has a wonderful, important place in long-term care. But you can still enjoy music, even if you don't have a music therapist. You can still enjoy music and have a memorial and say a prayer, sing a song without having a chaplain or a pastoral care leader in your home. So if that's one of the barriers that's been stopping you from doing these things, there are ways to go around that.
Yeah.
Okay, this photo here on this slide, again from Queen's Garden Long-Term Care in Hamilton. This is actually a memorial garden that was a joint effort between the Residence Council, the Family Council, and the Homes Management team. So they've redone this outdoor courtyard garden area at the front of the building, and it now serves as a memorial garden. Families, residents can go there and hold small gatherings. Plaques can be, commemorative plaques can be added to the garden. So lots of different ways to remember people. And again, just a note here, if it's possible your home's not ready to do a service, celebration of life, there is great value in even just printing the obituaries from, we used to get them in the newspaper, but printing the obituaries from from online, or live streaming. So many places are doing live streaming of services. So having that opportunity to say goodbye, that's something that you can do right away, just to get things going if your home's not ready to start their own celebration of life program.
Well, our leader of the resident council has ordered a very large plaque that is put in the front of the building. And it simply says, "You will not be forgotten."
I like that.
That's
And
nice.
pardon?
That's nice.
Yes.
Thank you, Carol. I think we can go to the next slide. Okay, so we did talk about some guides and resources. Again, there is a lot of information and training and guides and tools available to the long-term care sector. Not as many that are for residents, but our hope is that we can slowly make some changes to improve that. Two of the websites, or two of the resources that we really like, are the ones from our friends at the CLRI, the Centers for Learning, Research and Innovation in Long-Term Care. They have all kinds of things. They have training modules, they have templates, they have free courses. For example, this one that's coming up, the due date for application is actually October 6th, so Friday. It's palliative care training for teams, and the home doesn't have to pay anything for it. You have to send a group of people to do the training, and you may even have access to wages being covered up to a certain amount. So check out this link here if it's something that your home might be interested in. Unfortunately, it is still only for team members at this time, but I wonder if a question could be posed and asked if there's a member of the Residence Council who might want to participate. You never know. The worst that could happen is they say no.
That's
so
right.
always good to ask. And then this one here, the SPA LTC. So SPA LTC is strengthening the palliative approach in long-term care. This was a project, a big project that was undertaken to improve palliative approach in long-term care. Again, all of these things will be on your resource page that's going out for you. This particular booklet that you see here, Strengthening Bereavement Care, also has many of the ideas that we talked about today and goes very in depth with them. And it's very nice because it does include a part about involving residents and including residents. So we really love this resource, and I hope you do too. You can print it, share it with your residence council, share it with residents who may be interested, and see what's possible. And we can go to the next slide.
Steph, there was a couple of comments in our question and answer that I just wanted to highlight.
Yeah.
I thought were great ideas from what homes are doing.
Mhm.
There's one home that does a special wreath with a battery operated candle and a message in a picture frame in the home area to alert residents, visitors, and staff, not that the person has passed away, but that they are at end of life. And the little picture frame says, if this candle is lit, someone is saying goodbye to their loved one. We kindly ask that you speak softly and with respect during this difficult time. And I just thought that's a great way. I'd never thought of that one either. And so I think that's a great example.
Right.
And
Mhm.
then another comment in there that I liked, the idea that was given was on your palliative care committee, you can have clergymen or other community supports and volunteers to be added onto your palliative care committee. So I think that's a great suggestion as well.
Thank you so much. As we have been answering questions throughout the presentation, we don't have a time at this point to answer questions, but you're most welcome to include them in the evaluation after this webinar or to reach out to us. For residents on the line, we will have our resident forum tomorrow and we can continue the conversation there. So I just wanted to thank you again for your time today. Thank you, Devorah and Carol.
Well, thank you. Thank you
My
for inviting
pleasure.
us.
This has been such a special time. I just want to end with one last little bit of insight that a resident shared with us. So during a forum, he said that being part of the celebration of life and listening to the stories about a resident, Jerry, who had died was so meaningful because it changed the way that he thought about Jerry. Before Jerry passed away, all the resident knew about him was that he sat in a particular spot in the dining room, that he didn't speak, and that he mostly slept in his wheelchair. Now, when this resident thinks of Jerry, he sees the man who grew up in the prairies, got married at 18, and moved to Ontario with his sweetheart, where he raised a family and worked as a farmer and was a volunteer hockey coach. Having read the obituary and heard people speaking about Jerry brought him back to life.
Yep. Yeah.
So
if you're ending that on an emotional note.
How nice would it be if we could know each other's stories that that will be in our obituaries before we pass, so we can see each other for who we are.
Yeah.
That's very true.
Thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you for having us, and I hope that what we did today will continue on for other residents who come after us into long-term care homes.
Yeah, and that it's just a start of a conversation for some homes to start their process with their residents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so.
I think I'm going to take the recording and play it at Residents Council.
That's a very good idea.
Great idea. Okay, well, it's 3:03 and it's been a pleasure. We'll see you next webinar Wednesday, November 1st.
Oh, you're not having a webinar tomorrow?
Tomorrow's the resident forum.
Oh, Residents Forum, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, take care, everyone. Thank you.
All right, Donna. We'll see you all tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye-bye now.
Bye, Carol. Bye, Devorah.
Bye, everybody.